Welcome back to the Alcohol Free Revolution podcast. My name is James Lloyd.
And my name is Steve Smith.
And we are both alcohol free coaches. We went alcohol free 4 years ago, and life has been pretty good since. So we decided not long ago that we'd start a podcast and we'd share tips, strategies, everything to do with going alcohol free, because a lot of people are thinking about it. A lot of people are on the fence about going alcohol free or even taking a break. And we want to help encourage people to do that because it's absolutely fantastic. If you sort of think you're going to lose anything and you're not going to have that beer that I wanted, or I can't have a glass of wine with dinner, it's not like that at all. It's all wins. It's all fantastic. It's all gravy. So what you're going to hear from us over the next, however long, next 5 years, hopefully, we're going to have loads of sober influencers on. We're going to have former coaching clients that we've worked with, and we want to give you that motivation to come and join us on the fun side of the island. Steve, tell the audience a bit about yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. My name's Steve. I went alcohol free 4 years ago, as James just mentioned. And yeah, there's a reason why it is the number one growing fitness trend of the 1925. 1925.
Come on, man.
Welcome to 1925, everyone. Of 2025. So yeah, the fastest growing fitness trend. And like I say, and like James mentioned just there, if you're alcohol free, or if you're even thinking about it, or even if you're, we don't care if you're still drinking, if you want to listen to this, because we want to spark curiosity and not preach. So yeah, spent 30 years of my life drinking prior to this. So who am I to preach to you? But equally, as James mentioned just there, this is what we're aiming to do. So today, what I would thought I would bring to the table today, James, is talking a little bit about something that jumped out for me probably a few months in, or certainly a couple of months into my alcohol-free break. And that was suddenly I got whacked in the face one day by realizing how much time I had. And it kind of hit me. I was like, it was almost like a bit of a scary thought. And I thought, what the hell am I going to do with all this spare time? And that wasn't meaning that I was spending every waking hour of the day in the pub. I spent my fair share of time in the pub or out socializing and drinking, but that wasn't it. It was also not just the time that was drinking. It was the time thinking about drinking and the time with all the thoughts taken up around drinking and how that filled my time. I'm not sure really whether you had similar experiences in your experience.
Oh God, yeah, it was huge. Yeah, it was absolutely huge. I think that's one of the biggest things I think that people come to when they take a break from alcohol is, how are you going to feel all the time? And at first, I found it quite difficult. And when I say at first, I mean probably for a year and a half. I really didn't really know quite what to do with myself because, as you said there, if you've come from decades of drinking, and I was the same as you, mate. I pretty much drunk from 60 onwards, and I never stopped until I was coming up to 40. So I'd had 3 decades of week in, week out, going to the pub, sitting at home watching football, drinking a beer, watching TV. And that was the thing. And then when I removed the alcohol, it was kind of, what the hell do I do now? And yeah, being completely honest, it does at the beginning feel like a bit, I won't say loss, because it's more of a gap, it's more of a hole. And you kind of need to fill that hole with something else. And finding that thing that lights you up, that passion, is part of the journey, and it's part of one of the best parts about going alcohol free. Really, it's about learning what you've kind of forgotten about, or what you haven't, got into that's been taken over by drinking. For a lot of people, they look back at what they enjoyed doing as teenagers, or things that they've set aside and forgot about in preference to going to the pub or drinking in the park, and things like that. But having that sort of time back does give people a lot of space to pursue things they didn't have time to do before. And I think, for me, it's landed me right here. I've the last year and a half, I've been, become a coach, helping people change their relationship with alcohol. And, I've started a business doing this, helping people. I've got the podcast with you. And there's a whole host of activities that have come around that. Now, obviously, that is specifically related to being alcohol free. But I know many other people who quit the booze, who filled that hole with other things. Maybe they've got into art, or they've taken up, serious exercise habits, and, or had more time for their kids. What's it been like for you?
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think yeah, we look at it when we're drinking, we look at it as the time we're spending out drinking, right? We think I'm having that Friday night out, but actually that then leaks into your mornings and leaks in. I know, certainly for me, once I sort of moved into my 40s, it was leaking into 2 days afterwards. So how much time was I actually losing going forward from the actual drinking evening itself? I think mentioned on an episode a while ago about James Corden's quote that you kind of alcohol stealing time from tomorrow is almost like a credit card where you're making that withdrawal of that extra time for tomorrow, and that's kind of where it was for me. And also the cumulative effect of it, really. So the cumulative effect of just feeling generally groggy and generally just not functioning at your full potential. So all of that is the time that comes back. The time that comes back when you're lifted and you suddenly that fog does disappear. And I had that biggest moment around 100 days, and yeah, started to think what to do with it. What can I do with it? For me, yeah, I poured it into running because that was my way of getting my dopamine hit and clearing my head. But so many other things come up, and so many, the time to put aside to study a new course, to further educate outside of work. But the other thing that we, and I'm sure, will be a great podcast episode and maybe get more people thinking about a break from alcohol is actually when you get that time, the other thing you get back when you take a break is money.
Oh God.
So it's
Crazy.
the ability to, you've got all this extra time, but you can actually spend money without going crazy. You can actually fill that time because you've got the extra cash
Yeah,
in your
yeah,
back pocket
yeah.
to do things that you love and actually maybe book that weekend break. And I would always, I don't track my days anymore. I still occasionally look down. I have an app that tells me, but the app that I have also tells me just how much money I've saved on drinking, and it doesn't take into account alcohol-free beers. So I take it literally. I don't take it 100% literally, but at the same time, yeah, it's probably north of 15,000 pounds in 4 years, which is
Oh, it's nuts.
crazy.
It's
Yeah.
nuts. I've got an app actually. I'll have to dig out what it's called, but it tracks how much you've saved based on what your average kind of daily spend on booze was. And one of the things I did with mine was I joined a really posh sports club and sort of spa, which is just down the road from me, called Penny Hill Park.
I know it well because I came to meet you there, and I was
Yeah,
like,
it
"Oh,
was. Yeah,
how very plush this is."
yeah.
Yeah.
That is where that's where the whole kernel of this podcast came from. We met at Penny Hill, but I'm not trying to willy wave here, but Penny Hill is 350 quid a month, and my old drinking bill pays for that. So rather than sitting in a pub getting pissed, poisoning myself weekend after weekend, I can sit in a nice spa, beautiful pool, outdoor pool in the summer, beautiful gym, sauna for that same money. And that is one fantastic trade-off as far as I can see. I spend probably 4 days. It's my second home. Absolutely love it there. And I
Mm.
just get to do that. That's a great trade for drinking. I'm improving my health and my well-being. And yeah, you're right. Money's such a huge thing. One of the things that I always recommend that coaching clients do is after a month, once you've done your first month alcohol free, go and buy something you really, really
Yeah,
want. Reward yourself because you've saved that money anyway. Go and blow $1,000 on something that you want. Fuck it. Just go and blow $1,000. Yeah,
Mm.
because you saved that money. So treat yourself and make it tangible, make it a reward
Yeah,
because you can afford it because
yeah,
you saved that money.
yeah. Absolutely, absolutely. I spent many years before quitting when I was in my cycling, trying to thinking about spending money on a bike and realizing that actually when I did stop drinking, I lost the weight that I would have still had on a heavier bike. I lost that weight off my waistline, and I then had the money in my back pocket to go and buy myself
Yeah,
another
yeah.
bike as well. So, yeah, it's whatever works for you, really. And it is so true. I think it is about those little rewards that you can give yourself as you move through time, whether that's a week, a month, 3 months, whatever it happens to be. I found that certainly in the early days, those tracker apps were brilliant for me, and the day counting. Once you get past, I also think it's a good thing that I don't track the days now. That just shows where my
Oh yeah.
mental space has gone to it, that I don't think about the days. But I love that moment where I actually, I see that app on my screen. I think, I haven't looked at that for a while. Let's open it up and see. And, I'm looking now and it's 1,489 days. I'm like, wow, that's just, that's,
Is it?
Yeah,
It
so
just,
it knows that I'm coming up to a 1,500-day milestone, but I wouldn't have thought about that. I wouldn't even thought about it for a second. But
which app do you use?
what's that? Sorry,
Which app do you use?
I use I'm done drinking.
Yeah, me too.
Do you? Yeah,
So
so it
what?
gives you some interesting stats there. I'm going to look at it now, and I'm going
All
to
right,
say,
let's compare scores.
go on then, let's go for it.
So,
Off you go.
okay, I'll read it from the top. So, for just for the listeners' benefit, it tells you how many. Well, it tells you how many minutes, hours, weeks, months, and years since you last had a drink. It tells you how many drinks you've not consumed. It tells you how much money you've saved, and it also tells you how many calories you've saved. So,
This is like top trumps, isn't it?
it is top trumps. Yeah, it's top trumps. So, I'm done since mine's the 4th of September 2021. What's yours? You know, you've got a few months more on me.
27th of June, 2021.
Okay, so I've got for me that's 1,421 days, which I can't even tell you how many minutes it is. I know it's over 2 million minutes. We won't go into the rest; it's going to get too boring for people. But in terms of drinks not consumed, based on my run rate, I've not consumed 7,107 drinks, and I've saved 8.5 grand. But bearing in mind that that 8.5 grand is based on supermarket prices for a 4-pack of beer. So that does not include. It's working out if I drank a 4-pack of beers every day, which is roughly what I was doing. Obviously, I was drinking more than that at the weekend, but it's a rough rule of thumb. So that's like £1 a can, not £8 a pint in London.
Well, that's interesting because I've gone with going out prices. Although I'm sure that this doesn't relate to exact cash in my back pocket, because a lot of the times I would go out would be with work, and a lot of the times that work might be picking up that bill. But even if we look at 50% of that being my own money. So yeah, I stopped on 27th of June 2021. I'd done 1,489 days alcohol free, 5,959 drinks not consumed. And I'd say
that's interesting. You've got less drinks consumed than I have, but you've got more money, right? How much your money?
Yeah. Well, I put it in at pub prices. And that's telling me I've saved £15,345.
That is insane. I mean so realistically, it's probably somewhere in the middle. So let's call it 12 grand then as an average between both of us. If I'm on 8.5, you're on 50.
And the other point that doesn't take into account is taxis, poor food choices on the way home, that kebab, the late night shots, the rounds, everything else. That's just literally taking it as a face value. So yeah, it's really interesting, and I love that as a tracker. But yeah, it's nice to check back on from time to time.
Show me the money.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, it's the funny thing is though, although the whole world revolves around money, it doesn't really actually tend to really come up that much when you're kind of coaching people and you're speaking about alcohol free. Money is actually quite far down people's list, as it should be. Health's obviously far more important, but when you start talking about 12 grand over 4 years, that's a lot of money. That's the good few family holidays right there.
Absolutely. So yeah, I mean, it would be for me to kind of have a it's a point of interest, isn't it, to think back. Well, firstly, have a little think about how much time do I actually spend drinking and thinking about drinking, and what could I spend my time with? And secondly, if I gain that time back, look at the money I could spend on doing other things, those city breaks, those times away with the family. We bought a motorhome last year, and I'm sure a big chunk of that was funded by not drinking. So that gives me a huge sense of achievement when we're kind of parking up at the side of the road in northern France on a nice surf beach somewhere, and just literally have to walk across the road to get into the sea, and you can look at the sunset and think, actually, big chunk of this is, I give myself a big pat on the back for that, and a big chunk of this is brought around by making that decision 4 years ago to do this. And then suddenly, so you do see those gains, and those gains just get greater and greater the further it goes.
Yeah, completely. I'm just thinking as well, I mean, we're coming from a point of view as being beer drinkers. I've got a lot of friends who are quite easy to drop £100 on a bottle of wine and start adding that up.
Yeah.
Just like, whew, crazy money. But,
exactly.
But yeah, I think going back to what the point you were making there about time, it's a really interesting one of the things I think a lot about, and I talk to my wife Chris a lot about this as well, is when we used to go out, let's say we go to the theatre for argument's sake, I wouldn't really be present because I'd be kind of strategizing about when I was going to be getting the beers in. So if we're sat, say when I go to football, even when I go to Goodison and I'd go to the football, within about 10 minutes of the kickoff, I'd be thinking about when am I going to leave and go and get the halftime pint, and then where are we going to go afterwards, and what's the quickest way to get to that pub, and should I get two in for the interval, and all this kind of thing, and all of this stuff going on in your head. And whilst that's happening, you're not present with the people that you're with, and you're not enjoying the event that you're at. You're just thinking about, when's the booze going to come? When am I going to get the beers in? And it's now I look at it, it just seems so. I feel so sad for the fact that so many great experiences I could have been having, but I was just thinking about when am I going to get a beer in, and the fact that the alcohol is the main event of going out all the time, whereas it shouldn't be. It should be going to the theatre, spending time with your partner, or going to a match with your best mates. But I don't know if that's necessarily true for everybody. Maybe obviously everybody has a different relationship with alcohol, and some people, of course, can go and do these things, and alcohol's not really that much of a big deal. But certainly for me, it was just in my head the entire time, and that's the time that gets attached to that is huge. And one of the things that I always encourage people to do is to make a decision on, okay, are you going to take a break for however long you're going to do it, but make that decision and be firm with yourself about it, and take the debate out of your head. Make it a binary decision. Am I going to drink for the next 30 days or am I not? And be firm about it, and don't leave the door in any way ajar, because that leads to the internal debate of will I, won't I? Well, I'll see how I feel about it when I get there, that kind of thing. If you're like, okay, between these dates, I'm not drinking. And I know for a lot of people that it's not as easy as just like, boy, I can't, it's not as simple as just saying I'm not going to drink, because I've tried that before and it's really difficult. And I think that is where working with somebody else and having some support and having a coach makes such a huge difference. I don't know what you think about that.
Well, I was just, when listening to you there, and something I thought, the vast majority of us, right? We work through the year to save up the money to take that 2 to 3 week break in the summer, or 2 week break in the summer, or maybe a week in the winter to go away on holiday. And I now look at my holidays. My holidays don't fly past. Like, you'd go away for 2 weeks, you'd be like, where did that go? And you don't get, now going on holiday. It was a dread of mine when I first took a break, was how am I going to go on holiday alcohol free? Because holidays were all about drinking. And like you said, it was the main event. But now my holidays just feel so much longer. They feel so much more fulfilled. I remember everything. I'm up earlier. I'm out earlier. I'm often out running on a trail trying to find a route for us all to go on later on in the day, or whatever it happens to be. So that aspect of it, that time is just time that you win back.
That's true.
And and you're almost getting more value for money for what you're doing. And in time, I don't miss, even all inclusive holidays now. We don't go on them as much, but we certainly went on them a lot more when the kids were younger, because it's much easier to do with young kids. But I didn't miss it, and equally the all inclusive, what does everybody normally do on an all inclusive holiday? That the first thing that you think of when you hear all inclusive holiday is how much free alcohol you will probably get on that all inclusive.
Yeah. What are the beer options? It's like,
yeah, exactly. No one
and beer you've never heard of. Like, oh.
It's immediately the thing that springs to mind. You don't go, oh, all inclusive, I wonder what they'll have on the buffet on the Saturday evening. It's not about that. It's immediately everybody's initial point. All inclusive means free booze. And that's what you think. So I think, for me, holidays were a big win. Holidays come back, and that time is just so much more precious now. And I enjoyed my holidays so much more.
Yeah, I think you got me thinking when you were talking about that in terms of the all-inclusive piece, because I've got this thing about company Christmas parties where you get a free bar, and it's exactly the same as all-inclusive. When people know they can drink as much as they want, they drink more than they normally would. I kind of say, whenever I'm speaking to people, business leaders, if you're offering people a free bar, of course it's going to end in carnage, because people are like getting double parked. They're like, oh, make it quadruple. I'm not paying for it. I'll have two. You're encouraging them to drink even more, and it's the same with all-inclusive holidays. I don't know if there's a connection to it. But one thing that I've noticed on the holidays I've been on since I've been alcohol free, you mentioned it there about time and about how much longer and more enjoyable it feels. I've noticed that as well. But one thing I used to notice ever since, I was drinking was it would get to a point, if I was on a two-week break, I'd get to about 10 days in, I'd be thinking, right, I'm ready to go home now. And I don't know if that's related to the alcohol. I don't know if that's, a general sense of how I was feeling having, been drinking for 12 hours a day for an entire week, which is what I was doing on holiday, or if that's just not relevant to it. But definitely the holidays I've been on since I've been alcohol free, I've never had that sense of I'm ready to go home now. I've wanted to carry on, and because
Yeah,
it's such a fantastic time.
yeah.
I don't know if that's relevant or if that's something that you've experienced.
No, I'm the same. I'm the same. Totally the same. Totally the same. And
Mm.
it's that old philosophy, isn't it? It's that that we have. It's not how much short time, how little time we have. It's how much of that time we choose to waste.
Oh God, you're so right. I mean, what is the most finite, valuable resource we have?
Time.
It's time,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly.
It's I think maybe it's, as we've got older as well, this has become something that you kind of think a bit more about because when you're 20, you don't give a shit about this because you've probably got 80 years ahead of you or whatever, and it doesn't enter your head. But I think when you get to kind of midlife, which is, well, I'd like to say we're at midlife, but maybe we're a little bit past it. But we're both, you're 52, I'm 50. You start to think about, okay, how is the rest of my life going to play out? How many years have I got left? And like I say, I want to get to 100. I'll put it out there right now. So I'm going for at least another 40 or 50 years. But you start to sort of see, okay, how it's going to go. And that's when you start to think, oh, I've only got, maybe I've only got 1,500 weeks left. They say that on average people get 4,000 weeks a year, don't they?
Yep.
Weeks in their lifetime, which is
Yep.
75. So you
Yep.
start thinking, oh, only got a few left. I haven't got quite so many as I had when I was in my 20s. I need to make sure I'm using these productively. And
Yep.
maybe that's part of the reason why people start to consider one of the many reasons why people start to consider whether alcohol's serving them, because it's robbing you of time at a time when you can see it coming to an end.
Yeah. I think coming at this from the angle of being a dad as well, and I heard that you see as much of your children in the first 16 years of their life as you do in the rest of their life cumulative. So you
Wow.
spend more time with them in those first 16 years than you do for the rest of their life put together, because obviously they're under your roof for the majority of that time between 16 and 18. And so for me, it's like how much of that time is being, don't get me wrong, there are times when I need to be away from my kids, and we all do as parents. But there are times when you actually look back and you think these times are so precious.
Oh God. Yeah.
Watching them grow, they are so precious. I've just dropped my son off today for his scout camp. He's going away for a week, and that week will feel like a lifetime. Of course, kids can drive you mad from time to time, but at the same time, when he's gone for a week, I just think, how many weeks of time did I miss off from them during the first 4 years of their life, first 3 or 4 years? How many weeks, if I added up all the time I either spent hungover or feeling rotten or out drinking with my mates, or how much time did I miss if I put that all together and actually think of it like that? So it's a massive thing for me. It's robbing time, particularly with family, which is the most important thing.
And it's what you don't remember as well, right? Imagine when you're
Exactly.
70, you're thinking back to when your kids are 10 and
Yeah,
Christmas when they're 10 years old, that kind
yeah,
of thing. And you can't really remember it because
yeah,
you got
yeah,
annihilated that
yeah,
Christmas.
yeah.
It's not something that I can really comment on because I don't have kids, but I always sort of think about what it must be like when, you're waking up on a Sunday morning and you've been out and you've got trashed the night before and you feel like shit and you've got a hangover, and at 6 a.m. you've got your kids piling into the bedroom, jumping on the bed and making loads of noise, and you're like, oh, please just leave me alone.
Yeah, yeah,
Just go away. And you're trading that time with your kids for what? For exposure,
exactly.
for drink.
And I would, as a dad, other dads would kind of joke about that. Oh my God, the hangover with the kids jumping on the bed at 6 a.m. But actually, how are you reacting? How are you coming across to them? That's they're sponges at that age. And if that's how you suddenly are reacting at that time, what's that saying? What's that saying to them? And we want to spend that bit more time being present and being there with them. So you can't undo that. And hopefully making that break has given the best opportunity to sort of repair some of those earlier years, I suppose. But
I hope,
yeah,
I hope one of the things that we get across to people over, through listening to these podcasts is, I know everyone, will think, yeah, but I like a nice glass of wine, or, I like a few beers. And I get that, but have a look at what is on offer when you're not doing that. and this is the thing, all these things we talk about week after week, all of these benefits that come with trade, that you can trade for a nice glass of wine or a few beers. Write it all down, all of the things that if you stop drinking and you went alcohol free, even if you're drinking a modest amount, write down all of the things that you would get, you know, health benefits, better sleep, more quality time with your kids, all of these things we talk about. I mean, the list is absolutely endless. I do this with coaching clients normally in the first session, and they'll come up with a list on average of between 25 to 30 life-changing benefits of taking a break from alcohol. And then you look at, okay, what do you get if you carry on drinking? And they're like, well, it helps me relax, helps me socialize. I like the taste of a glass of wine. And none of those things are true, by the way, anyway. But let's say they are. Is it really worth all of the other amazing stuff that comes with going alcohol free? And that's what we focus as people so much on what we think we're losing, and we completely miss what we're gaining. And the gains of going alcohol free are overwhelming. You know, that's why we're doing this, right? That's exactly why we're here, because we're both completely overwhelmed by how good life is when you don't have alcohol in it. And I'm sure there are people thinking, maybe you guys were alcoholics. We weren't. You know, both of us were drinking regular amounts, you know, probably a bit more than most, but not amounts that you would consider socially unacceptable. You know, for me, I was probably drinking about 40 to 50 units a week. So 2 or 3 beers most nights, you know, binge at the weekends, maybe one night off a week, maybe not. I mean, what kind of levels were you drinking, Steve?
Yeah, similar sort of thing. I certainly was having a beer most nights. Occasionally, once I started to feel like a change was coming, my first kind of rule I made for myself, and we talked about moderation in other times. I would kind of say nothing Monday to Wednesday, but the amount of times Tuesday would creep in, and all of our work meetings always seem to be on a Tuesday. So I'd be in London on a Tuesday. We've got to go for a drink in London, haven't you? And actually, going back to what you were saying just there, and kind of briefly touching upon the cost side of things as well, is we talked about that. And if reading out those numbers earlier, that £15,000 or whatever seems like a huge, you go, oh my gosh. My initial thought would be, oh my gosh, how much was that guy drinking? Actually, how often do we sit down and calculate just how much we are spending? Because when I look at the price of drinks now, it's astronomical. You know, it's got to be best part of £7 a pint in London now. And yeah,
it's near a tenner, isn't it?
Well, you're at Penny Hill, mate. So the places you're going,
Penny Hill's £10 lucky saint, mate.
You're not going down spoons, are you?
Penny Hill's crazy prices.
Yeah, I'm sure. But when you actually sit down and work it out and tot it up, it makes a huge thing. And it's, you know, also we were talking there about, you know, I was talking about the time back with your kids, time back with your family, time back with anything else. You know what? Even, you know, for those listening that don't have kids, maybe not married, single, but, you know, successful in what they're doing at work, or wanting to grow their business, grow their presence at work, you know, it's actually, there's deeper time that you get back as well. And that's just the time and the clarity that you get, which then just gives you that kind
quality of time.
Yeah, that mental kind of bandwidth that you can have for new things, for big ideas, it can be anything. You know, we often talk about taking up this sport, or I'm doing this with my kids, whatever. But actually, it's just that clarity in your head to go, you know what, I've got a new project I need to do at work, and work is your thing. Then I used to think I got creative when I'd had a few drinks. I used to think, oh my God, there's a great idea I could have for work. And occasionally I'd ping over an email on the train on the way home thinking, here's this great idea. And I'd look at it in the morning and go, what the hell must everybody think? You know? So actually you're looking at that with clarity, and looking at how you can develop your own growth at work or personal life, is just that you just have that clarity to be able to strategize it and plan it. And yeah, there's so much. We look at time in so many different ways, don't we, rather than just a ticking hand on the clock. It's the clarity to be able to give you time as well.
Yeah, no, 100%.
The emotional capacity as well.
Yeah, you make so many good points there. It just takes a while, I think, for some people to kind of grow into their alcohol-free skin, if you like, and it definitely did for me. it took me. I had 30 years of being, the guy who always wanted to be really social and always wanted to be last to bed and
Hmm.
uh, just be a real kind of party animal, I suppose. Perhaps not so much in my 40s, but definitely in my 20s and 30s. And when I moved the drinking, it just gave me so much more headspace to find out, okay, what else is there that I want to get into? Maybe that happens naturally as you get older anyway. And I don't want to sort of land everything as like a golden, yeah, everything at the footsteps of alcohol. But I just think taking alcohol out of the mix for me just allowed me to kind of grow as a human being and just explore things that I was just didn't have the time for before and get into new things because you can't just remove alcohol and just carry on with your life as it is because it does leave this big hole. And initially that seems quite scary because you'll be like, well, what the hell am I going to do with all my time? But you figure it out and you go on that journey and you find new things that light you up that just weren't a thing before.
I
Because
think you almost develop a new identity with it as
oh,
well.
you absolutely do. Yeah, you absolutely do. This is, I think, one of the things that again it comes with kind of a longer period of being alcohol free, is that in a way, I think you have to redefine yourself because, and for me, I really quite early on actually really gravitated towards being alcohol free as a brand, if you like. It became
Mm.
my personal brand and something that I'm kind of deeply proud of. And I kind of was really from probably a couple of months in, I was like, yeah, I'm alcohol free. I love it. You got a
Mm.
problem with it? Let's talk about it then. But
Yeah.
I love it. It definitely was not something that I shied away from. I was very proud of it. And I think people that do break away from alcohol, I think a lot of people do become very proud of it because most people don't do it. Most people will never do it. And they'll just carry on just doing the same old cycles year in, year out, being mediocre. And I'm not trying to sort of come across as holier than thou or anything like that. But it's 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 quite difficult to do things something that's different from what everybody else is doing.
Mm.
I mentioned it before. We are fundamentally tribal creatures. We do gravitate toward doing what the pack is doing because that's what makes us feel safe. So doing something different is initially hard, and you have to push against what your brain's telling you is the right thing to do. But when you do that, I do think you become a stronger, more resilient person for it.
Well, that's growth, isn't it? Right.
Yeah.
That's the growth in it. That's it is those little moments. It's that going to that barbecue without the beer in your hand. It's going, it's that missing that, not just going for just the one evening or whatever it happens to be. And that's where all the kind of
Mm,
growth happens, and that's where you start to gain that new kind of identity because you're learning who you are without that crutch, really, and how to deal with all those new or existing challenges that you previously had, where alcohol would have just been your absolute go-to.
yeah. You
Yeah.
got you got to remember as well, if you've been drinking for 20 or 30 years, that is what your brain knows. That
Mhm.
is what you're familiar with, and that's what you're comfortable with. And your brain will always gravitate to that because it's a well-trodden path that it knows what it's dealing with.
Yeah.
When you're going to a completely different situation where there's no alcohol, your brain doesn't really know what it's doing. It's not in territory that it recognizes. So it will give you the signals that we need to get back on the path that we know because that's where we're safe and that's where we're comfortable. So that is why in the first, few weeks, the first month, it is hard because you're trying to plow a way through a field that's fully grown. But yet, on the right hand side, you can see the path that you know really well. That's really easy to walk through, and there's no
Mhm.
resistance. So you've got to kind of plow that new path, and over time, the path that you used to have, that used to be your drinking path, that's really well developed and is really easy to walk on, that starts to grow back.
Yep.
The path disappears, and you
Yep.
start plowing this new one which is not drinking. And over time, the more you do it, the more entrenched that path becomes, and that becomes the natural way of doing it. So you have to retrain your brain. And this is again why coaching is so different from going it alone. Because if you're not aware of how the brain works from a neuroscience point of view, people don't know this because your brain will naturally tell you to go to the path of least resistance, and that's drinking because that's what you know. But you
Yep.
have to push through in that first month, first 2 months, build a new path, and then over time that becomes your normal. And how you feel in the first kind of couple of weeks where it's quite difficult is not how you're going to feel after 2 months, because
No, you're right. Yep.
It's a real good way of looking at it, I think, because I think in the first couple of weeks when it's quite difficult, people think, "Well, I can't spend the rest of my life like this.
Yeah,
This is gonna be a nightmare." But it's not like that for the rest of your life. Every time you do it, it gets easier. The path gets more established, and the old path grows back and becomes less established. So after 6 months, it's completely natural to you. And we
yeah,
talked about the episodes recently whereabouts, do you miss alcohol anymore? And you just don't, because the path's grown back. It's not a thing now.
yeah.
Your norm is not drinking because that's the new established path.
I, I, I always come back to there's a great book. It's a well-known book, Atomic Habits by James
Yeah,
Clear. It's an
absolutely.
amazing book, and he talks about it from an angle of casting votes for your future self. And I think that's so true. Every time, whether it take even putting alcohol out the equation, if you want to be a fitter person, every time you go for a workout, that's casting a vote for being fitter. If you want to be a more present dad, every time you put the phone down, you're casting a vote to interact. So every single time that you attend one of these, any kind of event where you would have used alcohol and you use this opportunity to go alcohol free, you're casting a vote for your future self. And
Yeah,
every single time you do that, those votes go bigger and bigger and bigger. And it just eases.
yeah. And again, and I mentioned this on a previous pod. Like I said, as you know, I'm a bit anti dry January for the reason that people go into it with the mindset of I've just got to do a month, and then they get through that month and they're like, "Oof, back to normal." So the mindset is completely wrong.
Yeah.
I'm not saying people have to go into taking a break from alcohol with saying I'm never going to drink again. I don't agree with that either. But having when you do 60 days or even 90 days, you really can't avoid life. So you have to do that exercise of plowing the path, because it's a longer period of time, and you have to build those coping mechanisms. You have to go out and socialize. You have to go to a wedding, or you have to go to a christening or a funeral or a stag do or whatever it is, because shit comes along in life.
Yeah.
And you can avoid it for 30 days, and you can
Yeah.
just put your head down and not go out, and there's no benefit in doing that. But a longer break is where you have to clash with life head on, and you start plowing those new neuro pathways, and that's what's so important. But doing it on your own is quite difficult, because your brain is telling you, don't do this. We want to be drinking because that's what we know, and that's where having somebody to talk to and having accountability and strategy and support and a cheerleader. Not that I put pom poms on a short skirt or anything like that for anybody, but
They allow anything at
yeah,
21.
but you understand what I'm saying, right? I mean, well,
But yeah, yeah, it's just, yeah, I mean, but it is those small actions, isn't it? It's those little small actions that kind of shape the future and shape your identity. And you don't, the thing is as well, you don't actually have to be perfect at it. If you get it wrong, you slip up, you just get up and
yeah,
crack on, because I always remember at that precise moment, you're not necessarily drinking. So
yeah, that's all part of the mindset as well, isn't it? This
yeah,
idea perfection is the enemy of progress. Again,
yeah,
that comes up an awful lot. If
yeah,
you do take 60 days off, and you happens to be a couple of days where something happened and you had a drink, then at the end of 60 days, if you drunk two of them, you've been alcohol free for 98% of the time.
yeah,
That's an incredible outcome. In any
exactly.
in any sense. If you did an exam at school and you got 98%, you'd be A plus.
The only thing I can think of that a 98% wouldn't be acceptable is probably skydiving. Other than that, you're pretty safe. You're pretty safe with 98%. It's a
Yeah,
good result. It's a
get
great
back on the
result.
horse though, and
Exactly.
cracking on with it. But I
Exactly.
think it's so easy to sort of, again, it goes back to this idea of your brain wants to derail what you're doing because it's not comfortable in this unknown environment. So it will
Yeah.
say, "Oh, you've done it once now. All bets are off. Get back to doing what you normally do.
Yeah.
Do what we know.
Yeah.
Better than what you know." That is
Yeah.
what your subconscious is telling you. Better the devil you know. We know where we are with this. Keep doing that, and you have
Exactly.
to resist that and move away and approach it consciously.
Exactly. And now look, there you go. 4 years down the line, how much time do you have? And how much more have you put in? And we're sitting recording this once. I would have always struggled to find an hour a week.
Yeah, yeah. Do you know what, actually, as well? Just you just triggered my thought there as well. The idea of lifespan and health span. So yeah, you're getting time back, but you're adding so much more by not poisoning yourself with alcohol, living a better, having a more healthier lifestyle, better diet, exercise, better sleep, all these things that come with removing alcohol, you're improving the quality of the time that you've got left. So you're not just expanding your lifespan, you're expanding
The quality.
health span. Your health is better. So let's say you've got 30 years left, 40 years left. The quality of those years that you've got is so much better because you're in better health. And alcohol is just the very kernel at the bottom of that. It impacts all of these other aspects of health.
Awesome. And very true. And speaking of time, we're probably running a little short on it, but which is for other things. But I've really enjoyed talking about this, and I think it's something, like I say, we could probably talk about for a lot longer.
Good one.
And
One thing, actually, before you go, one thing that we should sort of say is we're recording this in August, and we've got some really fantastic guests lined up for September. You and I have been really busy this week booking in guests. You wanted to do a few episodes of the podcast, just you and me, to start off with, get to know each other a little bit better. But we've got some really killer guests coming on in September that are already booked in. So stay with us because this pod's going to get bigger and bigger. Steve, where can the audience find out a bit more about you?
So you can find me at www.soberilliant.com, and that's also on Instagram at sober.illiant. Yeah, so I post on Instagram regularly, so feel free to follow my bio on there. Anything, and then you can click on my links, and I've got ebooks and audiobooks and other bits you can jump on, or if you want to reach out for a chat, that's where you can find me. And yourself?
Yeah, so I'm not encroaching on your turf. I'm a LinkedIn man, so you can find me on LinkedIn, James Lloyd. I post on there Monday to Friday about all things to do with alcohol, trying to provide encouragement to people to come and join our alcohol-free clan. I've also got a website as well, which is alcoholfreecoach.com. Same for you, really. Anyone who wants to come in and engage and, maybe for a virtual coffee, send in tips about what they'd like to hear more of on the pod, just come and join the conversation. We welcome you with open arms.
Yeah, and if you're enjoying our weekly banter, please feel free to drop on and give us a little follow on our podcast and share the word. If you feel like giving us a 5-star review, that would also be great. It helps us to boost the podcast, and we want to reach as many people as possible. So tell your friends, give us a follow, and we look forward to spreading the word further in the future.
Brilliant. Great to see you, mate. Have a good week.
Great to see you too, and we will catch up very soon. Enjoy the stuff.
Cheers, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.